In 2016, California wife and mother Sherry Papini disappeared for 22 days. When she was found, she told authorities a detailed account of being kidnapped and tortured. Years later, in a stunning twist, Papini pled guilty to making false statements about what happened to her, setting off a media firestorm. Now, for the first time, Sherry Papini is telling her side of the story and revealing shocking new information. Sherry Papini, Caught in a Lie, an ID documentary event, Monday, May 26th at 9 on ID. Set your DVR. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 224 of the True Crime All the Time podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, what is going on?
What's happening, man?
I'm doing great.
Are you?
I am ready to jump into what I think will be a very, very good episode.
It will be.
Before we do that, let's give our Patreon shout-outs.
Okay.
We had Natasha Zinsu.
What's going on, Natasha?
Area Hughes Biebling jumped out at our highest level.
Well, thanks, Biebling.
With a shout out to her cousin, Hannah Hughes.
Well, thank you, Hannah.
Bobby Atrastain jumped out at our highest level.
What's up, Bobby?
Steve Rise.
Hey, Steve.
Michelle Colvin.
What's going on, Colvin?
Margie Stewart jumped out at our highest level.
Hey, Margie.
Sue Carter.
Hey, appreciate that, Sue.
Samuel Bylas.
Well, thank you, Samwell.
God's Word.
Hey, God.
Julie Oliver.
Hey, Julie.
Vanessa Alicia.
Alicia.
Mothman 666 jumped out at our highest level.
Oh, Mothman, did you meet God?
Scaring me a little bit. Melissa Stewart.
Hey, Melissa.
Samantha Calliste.
What's going on, Samantha?
Grande Mike jumped out at our highest level.
That's a big guy right there.
Oh, I know an old partner of yours.
Yeah.
Mariah Alva jumped out at our highest level.
Well, appreciate that, Alva.
Paula Motsney.
Hey, Paula.
Kimberly Stratner jumped out at our highest level.
Well, thank you, Kimberly.
Trisha Sykes jumped out at our highest level.
Hey, Sykes.
And so did Bree and Hudson Hawks.
Man, I like those names, Bree and Hudson.
Yeah, very cool. If we go back into the vault, Gibbs, this week we selected Julia Brindle.
Well, thank you, Julia.
So a lot of new support. We appreciate that. We appreciate the continued support. We had some great PayPal donations as well from Lillian Keller.
Hey, Lillian.
Samantha Rozier.
Appreciate that, Samantha.
John Hutt gave a sizable donation.
Hut.
And we had Serena Galloway.
Hey, Serena.
So thanks to all of you as well. Gibbs, right now we have an episode out on True Crime All the Time Unsolved. We're talking about the 2005 murder of Nona Carol Dirksmeyer, headed down to Russellville, Arkansas.
Yeah.
Very interesting case that I think people will enjoy hearing about. The facts, the suspects. I mean, Nona was a beauty pageant contestant.
Right. 19-year-old college student, just starting to make her way through life.
Yep. And so definitely check that out. All right, buddy, are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time?
I'm excited.
We are talking about Tracey Richter. And this is an interesting episode. It's a little different episode. To outsiders, I think Tracey seemed like an ordinary mother and wife. But what makes her somewhat unique is her manipulative personality. She had an extreme temper. She also had a propensity for violent acts. In an elaborate series of events spanning multiple years, 2 marriages, and one really horrible night in December, Tracey Richter swept up a lot of people into her chaotic life. She shot and killed 20-year-old Dustin Whede after he allegedly broke into her home. The reason why I say this episode is a little different, there are going to be people at the conclusion of this that will be asking themselves the question, is Tracey Richter an innocent person? Did she kill Dustin Whede in self-defense, or is she the cunning and manipulative person that the prosecution made her out to be. I think people will have to decide that at the end of the episode.
But it's going to be interesting, and that's what we're going to dive into right now.
In 1987, Tracey Richter met her future husband, John PItman, at the University of Northwestern in Chicago. John was a medical student, and Tracey was studying to be a radiographer. Pretty good school, Northwestern.
Really good school.
These were two really good-looking people, Gibbs. I mean, if you see pictures, you see everything that people have written about or said about these people. They were a good-looking couple.
Yeah, they were.
And I think they were instantly drawn to each other. In an interview with Fatal Vows, John described Tracey as vivacious, but also said that she was very good at reading people. She always told you what you wanted to hear. And at times, he said she seemed too perfect. And I get that. I think there are people like that. It's like, no matter what the situation is, they know exactly what to say.
Kind of manipulative.
And I think there are people that can use that skill for good, but they can also use it for doing some very bad things.
Well, they sure can. And she was a really smart woman, too.
Yeah, she was. She was very intelligent, and so was John, for that matter. I've seen estimates of her IQ to be in the 140s.
Yeah.
I think that goes along with the territory. Very intelligent, enables some people to be highly manipulative.
It sure does.
And also to be able to say the right thing, to know what people are looking for. It kind of all plays into it. Tracey and John got married, and then in 1989, they moved to Denver, Colorado. John was in his residency, and it was very demanding. I mean, he was working close to 120 hours a week, Gibbs.
Isn't that funny how they put those individuals through all that, where it's nonstop work. You're there hours and hours. And these are the people that have to save your life.
Yeah, I read that and I thought, well, that doesn't even seem possible. I mean, there's only so many hours in a week. 120 is almost, right up there. 24 times 7 is what? Beep, boop, beep, boop, beep, boop, boop.
A lot.
168. So he's getting 48 hours off a week.
So that's a lot of sleeping in between shifts.
Yeah. Very brutal.
Yeah.
And obviously you and I haven't gone through that, but I've heard horror stories. I have some friends that are doctors and I know it's a really rough time. So when you're in that kind of situation, pretty tough to be home. You're not going to be when you only get that many hours off.
Yeah. Not good for a relationship.
No, it's not good for a relationship. Tracey's mother, Anna Richter, said that when John was home, he was pretty distant. He wasn't affectionate. And he didn't seem attached to their son, Bert, who was born in 1990. You mentioned it, not good for a marriage. About 2 years in, I think things started, getting rocky. Tracey had career problems. It was almost as if she'd start a lot of different jobs and then quit very suddenly, often making up stories about the reasons why she was quitting. And then I think another issue was that Tracey was unhappy being a housewife. So she would start jobs, quit. She would be at home at times, not happy with that.
Didn't like that either.
Didn't like that. She started adopting lots of pets, but apparently she didn't take care of them. She was good at the adopting part.
She got them to her place.
Yes.
But didn't know how to take care of them after that.
Or didn't want to.
Yeah.
Or kind of the sheen had worn off after she got them home.
Well, that'd be frustrating.
And I think it was very frustrating to John. And then at one point in their marriage, John's parents found out that someone stole a couple of their credit cards and racked up thousands of dollars on them.
Okay.
Not something that anybody wants to find out. And then I think even more disturbing, once they started investigating it, they learned that it was Tracey.
That makes it even worse.
Yeah.
Because it's that whole, you should be able to trust your family circle.
Your inner circle?
Yeah.
Going back to De Niro in Meet the Fockers.
That's exactly right.
If you're inside the circle,
yeah,
you got to be trustworthy.
You have to.
Well, if you're stealing your in-laws' credit cards and racking up charges, it's not going to fly. Now, she denied it. And in fact, she even got angry at them for accusing her of doing that.
Well, that's one way to get people off you, is just go upset and mad. And what do you mean you're accusing me? I never did this or did that. Act just total denial.
Is that why you get mad at me so often?
I didn't do it. Wasn't me.
To try to throw me off the track?
Exactly.
So like I said, the marriage hit, a rocky patch. Tracey and John started to argue frequently. And, according to John, Tracey had an explosive temper. And he's talked about a particular incident where she got really angry over something small. I think it had something to do with the fact that he didn't put his shoes up.
Well, that happens in a lot of homes, I believe.
It happens here. And I think I've talked about it before. My wife does not like it.
I can see why. I've walked into this house and I'm like, there's like a dozen pair of shoes.
Yeah, there is often. No, not mine. Not all mine.
No.
But my wife would never do what Tracey did, because apparently she pulled a gun on John saying, you're never going to leave this house alive. I mean, this is over a pair of shoes.
Man.
If you believe, what he's saying.
That's a rough start.
So he ran out of the house, as anybody should if their wife pulls a gun on them or their husband pulls a gun on them. And as he's running out of the house, he hears the gun go off. So she's firing off a round.
Good thing she had a bad aim.
Over these shoes. Tracey, made it to the front door. And I think very quickly she was apologetic. She was saying, "Oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that. I didn't mean to do that." But John called the police. And when confronted, Tracey said, I was never going to shoot him. That wasn't my intention. My intention was to kill myself. And she also said she didn't think the gun was loaded.
Interesting thing to say to the police.
Well, it is. And those two statements kind of fly in the face of each other.
They do.
Right? So I intended to try to harm myself, but I didn't think the gun was loaded. So how was I going to harm myself?
Exactly.
Tracey was charged with discharging a weapon, and she had to go to 6 months of counseling. The story is what it is. It's, is it amusing? Maybe a little bit. I think because nobody got hurt.
Right.
And based on the fact that it was over a pair of shoes not being put in the right place, I think what it does is it provides a glimpse into Tracey's anger. And that's going to be a big part of this episode.
Clearly, she flew off the handle that quick over the shoes. So I can't imagine what she would do if it was something more serious.
No, but I think if you're the person living with her, you got to be a little concerned about what could be next. Sometime after this incident, John got a job in Chicago and the family prepared to move. They sold their house and they set about planning to ship their pets to Chicago with them. Remember, they have all these pets.
Right.
But one day, Tracey called John and told him that the pets were gone. And apparently she had this elaborate story about how she gave the dogs to a company that was going to ship them over, but it turned out to be a secret lab that was going to use them for experiments.
Whoa.
And ultimately, I'm not really sure what happened to the dogs. I know they didn't make the trip to Chicago. I think what's fascinating is you're really getting into some storytelling here, some fabrication, elaborate,
right,
conspiracy theory type, stuff. And I think it was this and other things that made John finally realize that, something's just not right with Tracey. So he ended up going to a private investigator, told him what Tracey had said happened to the animals. The private investigator told him, you know what, this is a problem. And after hearing about some of the other incidents in the marriage, I think the PI even got pretty concerned. One thing John told him was that Tracey had asked him multiple times to increase his life insurance policy.
Well, she did more. She was really persistent about it.
Yeah. It wasn't like, hey, maybe I think we should do this. It was like, you need to do this,
right,
is the way that I understood it. Now, I think you can look at that a couple of different ways, right? This guy is probably by this point making or getting ready to make a pretty good amount of money.
Sure. Yeah.
As a doctor.
Make sure you have that covered.
And you want to be able to replace that income. I mean, that's what life insurance is for. But everybody listening to true crime is probably thinking, okay, but that also oftentimes means somebody might be planning something against you.
Certainly some motive there.
Well, there can be if you're talking about a lot of money. That's the way that the private investigator looked at it, right? This is an issue. You need to be careful. Your life might be in danger. So in 1992, John hired another private investigator to try to figure this out. Was his wife planning to kill him or have him killed? This guy, Glenn, gave him a rundown of what he believed Tracey's plans were. He thought she would try to get him alone, somewhere private. She wouldn't kill him herself, but she'd hire someone else to do it. I think if you hear that from someone, Gibbs, about your wife, about the woman that you love, about the mother of your child, it's going to hit pretty hard.
Really hard.
Now, a lot of people might say, oh, that's my wife. There's no way she would ever do that.
Unless they listen to this podcast.
And then they're probably more suspicious than most.
Yeah.
But even with all of this information, and again, I don't know what type of facts this PI had that Tracey had some nefarious plans, but even with all of this, John would not divorce Tracey. And they continued to plan this move to Chicago, but John did not stop the PI surveillance of Tracey. So one day Tracey called John and asked him to meet her at the apartment, and then they were going to go to dinner together. As soon as John got off the phone with Tracey, his PI Glenn called him and asked if he and Tracey had just spoken on the phone. The PI was watching her. She was in her car. She was on the phone. He said she was driving east at a very fast clip. Their apartment was in the opposite direction. So the PI warned John not to go. And he said, if I was you, I'd get to a public place quickly. So, I don't think there's any doubt, Gibbs, this PI, whether right or wrong, he was very adamant that this woman was planning something deadly.
Well, he had real concerns.
He did. Tracey called John again and told him she was at the apartment. She asked him where he was. I think, in the end, John never went to the apartment. He told her that he wasn't coming. And to this day, he has no idea whether or not Tracey had a hitman waiting for him in the apartment or if she planned to do something, herself. I think what is troubling is that during the PI's investigation, he found out that Tracey was talking to some suspicious men. I think in total, she spent 7 nights with 4 different men.
Wow.
But this wasn't sexual. These weren't affairs. The PI said he didn't know exactly what was going on, but he thought it was something criminal. All of these men had false identities. They were driving vehicles registered to other people. This is some real Jason Bourne type shit we're talking about.
It's really scary, man.
And I think it was this information, right? For John, hey, your wife is out with a bunch of different men. I don't know what she's doing. I don't think she's sleeping with these men. She might be plotting. She might be doing something else. But I think for John, that was it. This is 1993 by this point.
Yeah.
He was pretty fearful for his life.
He's like, I got to get out of here, man.
And he did. He moved out. He left his son and Tracey. And Tracey begged John to take her back, but he refused. Their divorce was finalized in 1997. So, I think when you look back over this marriage, obviously it produced a son, but it was rocky and there was a lot of stuff going on. We don't have all the facts,
right?
But just the fact that you're hiring PIs to tell your wife and these private investigators are giving you this information that, hey, something is going on. You should be fearful for your life.
It's not a good marriage, man.
No.
If you have to worry about coming home and being murdered, probably time to end the relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Maybe look for somebody else.
Yeah.
Maybe start up an internet dating profile.
Yeah.
You know,
something.
Start the ball rolling at
Yeah.
least and get the heck out of Dodge.
For sure.
In 1996, Tracey began an internet romance with a guy named Michael Roberts, who was an Australian entrepreneur. Michael did an interview for the show Fatal Vows, and he said that what convinced him to begin a relationship with Tracey was, number one, how beautiful she was. And he said he was really taken with her intelligence, how articulate she was, and that she seemed to be so popular with those around her. Tracey visited Michael in Australia. She was there for about 19 days, and Michael proposed to her just before she went back to the States. The two got married, and a few months later, Michael moved to the U.S., and they ended up having 2 children together, a son named Noah and a daughter named Mason.
Well, that's a short period of time to propose.
Yeah, I don't know how long they had been talking on the internet, but, you know, to only have known someone in person for 19 days, that's a short amount of time.
It is.
to pop the question. I also think maybe it gives you some insight on how taken this man, Michael, was with Tracey, and maybe some insight on how she was able to manipulate people. Show them what they wanted to see. Tell them what they wanted to hear. And boom, you've got a marriage proposal.
That's right. And flip on them later.
And then within just a few months, like I said, he's moving to the United States. So it's a lot in a short amount of time. Hey, TCAT fans, you've heard me talk about getting wrapped up in a lot of things. Cheesy movies, the latest streaming true crime series. I get into all of it. But what has really wrapped me up is the game Best Fiends. It gives me an endless source of fun that I can access anytime right on my phone. Best Fiends is a match 3 puzzle game like none other, with literally thousands of levels and new content added all the time. I've been playing for quite a while now, and I'm a little bit obsessed. I love that rush of adrenaline when you beat a new level, or striving to get to the next level. I love it all. It helps me de-stress between all of the research into some of the dark things that we talk about. I mean, flat out, it's just fun. And I love the increasingly challenging puzzles. With Best Fiends, there's something new today, tomorrow, and every day after that. Collect tons of cute characters. With Best Fiends, the fun never ends. Download Best Fiends free today on the Apple App Store or Google Play. That's friends without the R. Best Fiends. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. If there's something interfering with your happiness or is preventing you from achieving your goals, BetterHelp is there for you. BetterHelp will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist. You can start communicating in under 48 hours. We're not talking about a crisis line. This is not self-help. This is professional counseling done securely online. It's available for clients worldwide, and there's a broad range of expertise available, which may not be locally available in your area. You can log into your account anytime and send a message to your counselor. You'll get timely and thoughtful responses. Plus, you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions, and you'll never have to wait in an uncomfortable waiting room. You can change counselors if you need it at no charge, and it's more affordable than traditional offline counseling. BetterHelp wants you to start living a happier life today. So visit their website and read their testimonials that are posted daily. Visit betterhelp.com/TCAT. That's better, H-E-L-P, and join the over 1 million people who have taken charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional. For True Crime All the Time listeners, you'll get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/TCAT. Michael knew about her troubled first marriage because Tracey was all the time going on these rants about John, because at the time they were fighting for custody of their son, Bert. Tracey called John a narcissist who only cared about money and power. And this was not an easy custody battle. It got to be very contentious. John didn't follow visitation guidelines and at one point kidnapped Bert.
That will heat things up.
Yeah, doesn't make it good for your bid usually in trying to get custody. Tracey accused him of having multiple affairs during their marriage, even accused him of molesting their son, Bert.
Yeah. She's not holding back punches.
No, and this is something that we're going to find out about Tracey, during this episode, is that she doesn't pull any punches, and she was not above making things up to make other people look bad. Again, I have no idea about these accusations of molestation, but there are going to be other things that will turn out not to be true.
Right.
John has said that people put flyers on his car, on other cars, accusing him of being a child molester.
Well, that can ruin your reputation really quick.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially if you're a surgeon, a doctor. I mean, if you're anything really, but the more high profile you are, the higher level job you have, who's going to want to go see a doctor who is being touted as being a child molester?
Right. Now, if it's not true, it's a shame. If it's true, you get what you deserve. But if it's not true, you just ruin a man's career.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. If it's true, that's what you get. But, when you look at it, Gibbs, how easy is it really to ruin someone's reputation? It's not that hard.
No, not in today's world, especially.
Especially in today's world with social media and you can put something out there that's not true and it gets all the eyes. It gets all the buzz. Well, when it comes out 3 months later that it's not true, there's something else that's getting all the buzz.
Yep.
And nobody sees that part.
Yeah.
And I think that's very sad. I think that's something that we need to do a much better job of, is vetting out some of these things before people's lives get ruined, get destroyed.
Yeah.
But again, if they've done it and it's a heinous act, like you were saying, that's what they deserve.
Sure it is.
I'm fine with that. So I think one of the important things is that Tracey is feeding all of this information to her new husband, Michael. He's taking it all in. Well, who's he going to believe?
Well, of course he's going to believe her.
Yeah. So this is his wife. So he's going to side with her on everything.
Well, he'll want to protect her.
And I think he did a good job of that. He spent his time, his money, resources to protect Tracey and Bert. At the same time that she's going through this custody battle with John, Tracey was trying to sue her dentist, Dr. Lespisa. She alleged that he drugged and sexually assaulted her during a visit. So she was suing him, but she never filed a police report, which her husband, Michael, said he later found to be suspicious.
It's a little strange.
It is strange. She also waited several months to tell Michael that this incident occurred. And I think he was troubled by that as well.
I don't know if that's so strange. I know sometimes you have to work your way through that.
Yeah, I'm not saying that doesn't happen, right? It can't be easy to have to sit down with a spouse and say that you were sexually assaulted, you were violated. That's not an easy conversation to have. But I think from Michael's viewpoint, and maybe this came out later on after he learned of other things, I think he felt upset. He felt a little betrayed that she kept it from him for such a long period of time. But he stayed with Tracey. He supported her. But it didn't take long, Gibbs, for her to turn on Michael. She started to say that he was neglectful. He was controlling. According to Tracey's mother, Anna, Tracey would often visit her because she felt lonely. And Michael would call at her house and harass Tracey about coming home. Now, Michael disagrees with all of this. And his contention is that Tracey has a way of always making herself into the victim. He said that.
Well, we all have somebody in our lives that tend to be that person.
Yeah, there are some people that do that. I don't know if everybody has a person in their lives, but maybe they do.
Yeah.
But there are some people that are true victims. There are a lot of people that are true victims. And then there are people that always view themselves as a victim,
right?
Whether they've been victimized or not. I'll say that. I think if you ask Michael, he would say Tracey was the latter. He also began to suspect that she was cheating on him because apparently she told Michael that she was a model for this black velvet whiskey. And so she had to travel, right, to go on these modeling gigs.
But she's probably making some good money then.
Yeah, you would think so. I think the problem that Michael had was that there was no paychecks for these modeling gigs.
This is like you get a free case of whiskey or something.
Well, I think he thought it was strange and probably led to him believing that she was stepping out on him, that these were all fabrications. She's not really going on these modeling gigs.
I had that same problem when I used to do that modeling for those crochet underwear. They were supposed to pay me, but I didn't read the contract very well. And it was just unlimited supply of crochet briefs.
Was the contract in crochet as well? And that's why you had such a hard time reading the fine print?
I couldn't knit my way through it.
But even though Michael suspected all these things, he did not want to give up on the marriage. So they decided to move to early Iowa to kind of restart things, to maybe try to rekindle it. Michael was doing pretty well in his business. They seemed fairly happy. And I think, according to Michael, he was happy to get away from what he called unhealthy influences. Mona Whede was a local real estate agent and one of their neighbors in Iowa. She has described Tracey and Michael as pleasant, outgoing, and considerate. She worked for Michael at his internet business, but she also said that immediately she noticed the tension between Tracey and Michael. I think the other thing she found very odd was that they each gossiped about the other.
It's very strange.
At work. So, yeah, I mean, gossiping about your husband or your wife, and they're both doing it at the same time.
To your employees.
Yeah, to the people that you work with, it's not going to come off as, ooh, well, you guys really got something there.
Right.
Better hold on to that. Michael offered Mona's 20-year-old son, Dustin, a job. Dustin was unemployed. He'd been in some trouble recently. So I think Michael offered to kind of take him under his wing, give him some guidance, some direction.
Get him back on track.
Yeah, I think that's what he was trying to do. So they made this move to early because they thought this was going to be a new start. It didn't turn out that way. Tracey discovered that Michael had been involved in a bad business deal that lost him a bunch of money. She went into a rage, shouting at Michael in the business. Well, Mona was there, so he sent Mona home for the day. And, she probably ran out the door, not wanting to be involved in that.
She probably said, no problem. See ya.
Yeah, I mean, who wants to stand there between a husband and wife who are involved in a shouting match?
Right.
It got so bad that at one point, Tracey kicked through the drywall. And apparently this place that she was kicking, it was very close to an electric heater. So Michael put his arms around her, tried to get her under control. Now, he said he was worried that she would electrocute herself. But they kind of got into a little scrap. Eventually, later, police showed up at the house. They pulled their guns on Michael and arrested him.
Well, she probably said he threw me to the floor, did this, did that.
Yeah, and again, I don't have all the details of exactly what happened, so I don't want to speculate too much.
Sure.
Very rarely do you have all the details. What you have is one side says this and one side says something else. Well, somewhere in the middle of that is the truth.
Right.
The problem is we don't always know the truth.
And the police are going to take somebody out of that equation.
And I think, Gibbs, more often than not, they're going to take the male. I think that's been proven out over time because I think, number one, males are most often the perpetrators of domestic violence against women. It's not that women can't perpetrate domestic violence against men. It just, I think, statistically is most often perpetrated by men. So the male usually gets taken out of the house, I believe is how that happens.
Well, Tracey's got a lot going on.
Yeah, she's got all of this going on with Michael. She's still going through this custody battle for Bert with John, her first husband. At some point, Tracey made a second abuse allegation against John PItman. I don't think that went anywhere, but the court also learned about the domestic issues between Tracey and Michael. Then in December 2001, Mona was discussing a potential job for Dustin with Tracey. Tracey wanted him to make copies and told Mona to send him over in the next couple of days. I don't think Mona thought anything about it, right? Here's a job. Great. Let's get him on it. But on December 13th, 2001, Mona received a call from her nephew. He told her something terrible happened at her friend's house down the street. Someone died, but at the time, he didn't know who it was. At first, Mona thought, well, maybe Michael shot Tracey or Tracey shot Michael.
Could go either way.
Well, I think that tells you in Mona's mind, having seen these two in action, that she did think it could go either way. But then Mona's husband told her that he saw Dustin's car at the Roberts home. When she arrived at the crime scene, the police wouldn't let her see Dustin and they told her to go home. Mona asked them, "Is my son here?" They said yes. She asked, "Is he dead?" And they told her yes.
But they weren't real sincere about it.
No, I don't think that she thought they were very caring in that respect. Knowing that a young man is dead and his mother's here, she thought they were pretty callous about it. So Tracey was interviewed by police, and she said that on the night of the 13th, she was home alone. Michael was on a business trip. Tracey told the police she heard someone coming up the stairs. She was holding one of her children, and she immediately turned to open a bedroom door. She handed the baby to Bert, and then she was yanked back by her hair. She fought. She managed to close the door to protect her children. It was two men. They strangled her with pantyhose until she was unconscious. Tracey eventually woke up and pushed one of them. They hit the wall and she ran away. She got to the bedroom, got a gun from under the bed, and began shooting in the direction of these two men. She heard footsteps running down the stairs, and then later police arrived to find Dustin dead in a pool of his own blood. What I thought was very interesting about the findings was that police determined Dustin was shot 9 times with 2 different handguns.
Well, that's out of the ordinary.
Yeah, I don't think you don't hear about that much, right? You shoot somebody X number of times, you go and get a different gun, and then you shoot them more. You know, I've seen conflicting reports that she grabbed one gun, fired, and then she was able to get to a safe, open that, get another gun. But 9 times is a lot. That's a lot of shots.
It is.
To hit one person. Now, I could see you firing 9 times, but to actually hit someone 9 times with 2 different guns, that is a very strange kind of fact. And I think it's going to come into play a little bit.
Sure, yeah.
So what we have, Gibbs, is Dustin Whede killed inside Tracey and Michael's home. At one point, Michael came home to find this out.
He's probably just shaking his head, man.
Going, what else? What else can happen in my life at this point? Mona was devastated. It was her son.
Yeah.
She launched her own investigation. She noticed that Dustin's car was parked right in front of the house, and it was parked under a security light. Dustin didn't have any weapons on him. There were no signs of forced entry.
He didn't wear a mask, didn't have gloves on.
Nope. Nothing to indicate that he was planning a robbery. So, I think at this point, police are very confused by Tracey's story and the facts as they were able to figure them out. I don't think Mona was that confused. I think in her heart, she believed that her son was murdered. She thought maybe he might have walked in on a robbery or on a meeting between Tracey and someone.
Sure, yeah.
Maybe a fight between Michael and Tracey. Maybe he wasn't gone. Maybe he was at the house.
But bottom line, he was at the wrong place at the wrong time.
And was killed. Trent Villeda, the DCI special agent who worked this case, couldn't find a motive. He also couldn't find any signs of things happening the way that Tracey said they did. That's usually a problem. He learned that Dustin didn't have any friends who would have helped him break into the home. But I think, Gibbs, over time, everyone began to develop their own theories.
Sort of having multiple theories out there.
Yeah.
What happened
that night. Michael believed that Dr. Lespisa was involved in the robbery. 3 days before the shooting, they were in Chicago, ready to go to trial for this sexual assault. So he told police to look for a Chicago license plate. I get that theory. You've accused a doctor of sexual assault. Okay. Is he going to want to eliminate the person that has made this allegation against him right before this thing goes to trial? Potentially. You could see where a husband might think that. Tracey's mom, Anna Richter, believed that Michael was involved. After the shooting happened, she described him as cold, said that he had this very strange look in his eyes. And she said he never really asked a lot of questions about what happened that night.
And he had those eyes again. Those eyes.
These eyes. And then you had Tracey, who said it was her ex-husband, John PItman, who orchestrated the whole thing. When her husband, Michael, tried to suggest that it was Dr. Lespisa, she shot him down every time and said, nope, I know it was John.
So Tracey thinks it's John. Michael thinks it's the doctor. And Tracey's mom thinks it's Michael.
Yeah. So everybody's pointing the finger at somebody.
Yeah.
At the crime scene, police found a key piece of evidence. It was a pink notebook inside Dustin's car. And it was his notebook, and it had notes about John's involvement. He wrote that he was hired as a hitman by a man named JP. And in the notebook, it said, JP wants me to get or force his ex, TR, to kill her son, Bert, and then commit suicide. And if that plan fails, plan B is to make it appear as though TR had committed the murder of her son and then committed suicide. So it's not too hard to figure out, right? JP, John PItman.
Right.
TR, Tracey Roberts.
Well, that's going to put John as a suspect.
Very damaging towards John PItman. But even with this evidence, the DCI special agent had his doubts. Because I think from his point of view, Gibbs, he couldn't figure out, okay, how did John even know this Dustin Whede kid?
And how could you make such an ask of somebody you didn't even know? That's a huge ask, right? Hey, don't really know you, but here's what I want you to do. I want you to kill my son and my ex.
Yeah, it's a stretch when you think about the fact that, okay, they're not in the same town. They don't live in the same place. How is John PItman going to meet Dustin Whede? And then to your point, ask him to do something that you'd have a hard time asking your most treasured confidant in secret, let alone some guy you just met or knew very little about. Detectives asked Mona if Dustin journaled, and she said no. She said Dustin hated writing. They couldn't even ever get him to do his schoolwork. So according to her, why would he journal of his own free will? Makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, there are people that keep journals. A lot of people do.
I got a lot of journals.
You do. And if they're ever found, they will be used as evidence in a court of law. But I do think this makes some sense when you look at Dustin. And I think the police thought that too. And they began to shift their theory from thinking that John had enlisted Dustin's help to Tracey had forced Dustin to write the journal in an elaborate plot to frame John. But police kept the journal under wraps because what they wanted was someone to come forward and talk about it voluntarily, right? They didn't want it out there and then have someone come in and talk about it who just heard it on the news or read it in the paper.
But still, this had to be rough for everybody involved.
Oh, it was. And I think on the Whede family in particular, to that fact, on Thanksgiving Day 2002, Dustin's father, Brett, took his own life. at Dustin's grave.
Tells you how hard that hit him.
Yeah, he took it very hard. So we're a couple years on, right, from this shooting. Police haven't solved it. Michael and Tracey are still married, but their marriage is continuing to crumble.
It's definitely not a happy marriage.
No. In late 2003 into early 2004, Michael caught Tracey having an affair. And in March 2004, Michael claimed Tracey tried to kill him. He said that for weeks she had drugged him with sedatives. I guess to the point, Gibbs, where a couple of times he fell asleep inside his car in the garage.
And she would turn the car on.
While he was asleep.
Yeah.
Trying to kill him with carbon monoxide. But even with all of this, Michael had a hard time leaving the marriage. Yeah. And that's kind of hard to believe. Okay, can you get over an affair? Can you work through that? I think couples do all the time. Can you work through the fact that your spouse is drugging you repeatedly and trying to poison you with carbon monoxide while you're drugged inside the garage? No.
There's no rebound from that.
I don't think couples therapy is going to fix that.
If you have to keep wondering, if I eat this, am I going to die later?
I know. It's just, how can you stay with someone who you know is trying to murder you?
Yeah. It's like, not only do I have to worry about you sleeping with the Walmart greeter or whoever.
Okay, very specific, but
I just throwing it out there.
We'll go with it.
Yeah. Now, on top of that, I got to worry about what's in my Wheaties, what's in my salami sandwich you made me, what's in my water.
What's in this Gatorade?
What's in this Gatorade? Yeah.
Yeah, so he had trouble leaving Tracey. I think he concocted excuses for her. But he did go to police and say, I think my wife's trying to kill me. But he could never convince them of that fact.
How could you convince somebody that, man, I think my wife's trying to kill me? Oh, no, I don't want to leave her, though.
No.
I'm okay.
And I don't know what I want you to do with her.
I just felt like I needed to tell somebody of authority.
It all seems super strange.
Yeah.
And on top of that, Tracey started to tell people that it was Michael who orchestrated the attack, not John. So she's flipped there. And I think it was that finally was the last straw.
That was the wake-up call.
That was the wake-up call finally for Michael.
Yeah.
He changed the locks on the house. He filed for divorce. And they began a custody battle over their children that lasted for years.
And he got out of Dodge, too.
Yeah, he moved to California in 2004 to get away from Tracey. And how could he not? If he truly believed this woman was trying to kill him. Don't let allergy season slow you down. Get common allergy meds for as little as $15 with GoodRx. So you and your family, pets included, can stop allergy symptoms before they start. GoodRx is free and easy to use. Just search for your prescription on the website or the app, compare prices, and get a free coupon to show your pharmacist. Save at over 70,000 local pharmacies nationwide, including Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, Publix, Kroger, and many more. Check GoodRx before every trip to the pharmacy to save up to 80% on both brand and generic medications. And did you know, GoodRx rewards you for saving money too. Join GoodRx Rewards today and earn points every time you use a coupon. Remember, GoodRx is not insurance, but works whether you have insurance or not. And it could be your insurance copay price. I've been using GoodRx for years, and I can't tell you how many times I have saved money even with my insurance. Stop allergies before they start and save big on allergy medications this season with GoodRx. Go to goodrx.com/TCAT. That's goodrx.com/TCATT. You know, once the temps start rising, I realized I was back in the same worn out rotation. Same tank, same shorts, same everything. So I gave my daily uniform an upgrade with Quince. Their pieces are easy, elevated, and somehow make me feel more put together without even trying. Like their 100% European linen shorts and dresses from $30. Luxe swimwear, Italian leather platform sandals, and so much more. The best part, everything with Quince is priced 50 to 80% less than what you'd find at similar brands. By working directly with top artisans and cutting out the middleman, Quince gives you luxury without the markup. And Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes. I'm getting ready to stock up on shorts for summer from Quince, and I know they're going to be amazing because everything I've ordered has been of the highest quality, and the prices are amazing. Treat your closet to a little summer glow up with Quince. Go to quince.com/TCAT for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/TCATT to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/TCAT. But, when you talk about the case of Dustin Whede, there really wasn't any good evidence. His case went pretty cold. Mona tried to file a wrongful death lawsuit against Tracey, but she couldn't afford the legal fees to fight that battle. Her case was dismissed in 2005. Then in 2010, this is 9 years after Dustin was killed, the DCI special agent Wehde persuaded the county attorney Ben Smith to reopen Dustin's case. They looked at the list of suspects, and I think pretty quickly they ruled out John.
Well, because John had a pretty darn good alibi.
Yeah, for that night. And so really, it kind of came down to Michael and Tracey as the most viable suspects. So this DCI agent, he started emailing Tracey. He told her he was part of a task force charged with finding out, who had committed this crime. So she began to open up little by little, revealing details in some of these emails. And at one point, she brought up this notebook that had been found in Dustin's car. The agent told her he was planning to interview Michael and John, and he asked Tracey for a description of John. And that description that she gave perfectly matched this paragraph in the journal.
Almost as if she wrote it herself.
Exactly. Or told someone, Dustin, exactly what to write. Now, that's not enough evidence to arrest someone, but it's definitely arousing suspicion.
It's definitely an aha moment.
Yeah, I think so. For this special agent, it was, but he needed more. In March 2011, Ben Smith interviewed a woman named Mary Higgins. And I guess Mary Higgins was one of Tracey's close friends. He told her, "We think that we found something that links Tracey to this." And I guess this Mary Higgins responded with, "You mean that stupid pink notebook?" So, I think the fact that Mary Higgins knew about the pink notebook right away implicated Tracey in the case.
Sure did.
Because how would Mary know about it if this was Dustin's secret journal, something that only he wrote in? She wouldn't. She would only know about it if Tracey knew about it and had told her details about it. By this time, Tracey had moved to Omaha after her divorce from Michael, but they arrested her there on July 27, 2011, 9.5 years after Dustin's death. She was charged with first-degree murder and sent back to Iowa. Shortly before her arrest, Michael won custody of the children and moved them to California with him permanently.
I'm sure it helped his custody case.
Didn't hurt it. Not at all. His plan was to move with the children to Australia, but before he could do that, he had to testify at Tracey's trial. Also, the judge ordered that Michael had to travel back and forth from California to Iowa so that Tracey could visit her children, which at first I thought was strange that the judge would order that he'd have to do this. But then I thought, okay, she's innocent until found guilty. She has a right to visit her children. So then I thought, well, no, it's not that strange. Not easy for Michael to have to, repeatedly make this trip, but
he doesn't want to be in violation of the court either.
No. If the court tells you have to do this, what are you going to do? In late October 2011, Tracey's trial began. Mary Higgins was the prosecution's star witness. She testified on October 29th, revealing Tracey told her about the notebook shortly after Dustin's death, while Tracey was recounting the shooting to Mary Higgins. Her son Bert walked in and asked, "Why did you go back there? You didn't have to shoot him. You didn't have to kill him." Tracey shouted at him and left. This is all according to the Des Moines Register. But Mary never told the police about the notebook because she just assumed that they already knew all about it. John PItman testified that the journal did describe him accurately. It said he was a doctor from Virginia, a white male in his 40s who was in the Army, and slightly overweight. On the stand, he denied any involvement in the incident. So the prosecution proposed that Tracey made Dustin write in the journal before she shot him. They thought perhaps she lured him into the house with the promise of sex, money, a job. They didn't know exactly what it was. Mona Whede testified that on December 12, 2001, Tracey told Mona, "We have a whole bunch of copies that we want Dustin to make." And apparently Mona told her, "Well, Dustin's not real speedy about getting jobs done." And Tracey said, "That's okay. No big deal." Now, the defense theory centered around the second intruder. They said that it could have been a man Mona was having an affair with. And I guess there was a man, Jeremy Collins, who testified that he had nothing to do with the crime. He said he didn't even really know Dustin. The defense characterized Dustin as mentally troubled, violent, and Mona admitted Dustin had had some behavioral issues, but she said overall he was a good kid, just trying to get by. On November 2nd, 2011, blood spatter expert Rodney Englert demonstrated how Tracey fired the gun at Dustin. The first shots hit his right arm, abdomen, and backside, and then the last 4 were to his head while he lay on the floor. One of the final bullets hit his shoulder, and the others went through his neck. But I think the key here, Gibbs, was that he testified that the final shots didn't occur until 15 minutes after the first set.
So he was laying on the ground. Enough time goes past, 15 minutes, according to him. And this is probably when the other handgun came into play.
Yeah. So in those 15 minutes, obviously he's incapacitated at the very least.
Right. No more danger, harm to her.
So they're saying you had plenty of time to either run out of the house, but that's not what you did. You got another handgun and you fired the fatal bullets into his head. Now, Bert testified in favor of his mother. He said that he was upstairs watching a movie with his brother while Tracey was giving his sister a bath. She brought Mason upstairs and handed her to Bert before shutting the door. Bert said he heard a choking noise and thought that his mother was dead. So he grabbed a baseball bat to protect himself and his siblings, and he gave his brother a pin as a weapon. Tracey entered the room. Her hands were tied up with pantyhose, and she had guns in each hand. Bert said that he and his mom left the room, and he saw Dustin trying to get up. Tracey put the kids back in the room, and she shot Dustin again. Bert said he heard his mom say, stay down, stay on the ground, don't get up, stay down." Then she fired shots. Bert went downstairs and called 911. And then he called his grandma. Now, Bert said he thought his stepfather could have been involved. He spoke on the stand about how Michael, Dustin, and himself took some kids to play paintball at an abandoned farm. They practiced what he called home invasions. He claimed his stepdad was obsessed with guns and was both controlling and manipulative.
So it's a good twist on this then, right? Because Bert is saying, look, my mom was attacked. Her hands were tied. She went and got her guns and she protected herself and us. And when the guy tried to get up again, she did what anybody else would do, put him back down because he wouldn't stay down.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt that Bert backed his mom 100%. Now, I don't know that it lines up very well with the testimony of some of the experts, right? We talked about that 15 minutes and all that. I'm not sure if all that lines up. The defense also talked about how the police botched the investigation. They didn't look at the trajectory of the bullets. They didn't recover fingerprints. They didn't video the crime scene. They didn't take Tracey's clothing into evidence. They also didn't interview Jeremy Collins until 2009.
It's a pretty big gap.
That's almost, 8 years or so.
Yeah.
They lost cell phone records. They lost some Post-it notes from Dustin's room. And apparently they said one of these notes said money in November with a phone number of a hotel that Jeremy Collins had stayed at with Mona. An emergency room doctor who treated Tracey that night testified for the defense. He described her as very shaky, very tearful, with red marks on the front of her neck that supported her story. And then the defense ended with talk of a local veterinarian who said that he saw Michael dropping off a package at a bank a few hours before the shooting. And this is important, right? Because we mentioned it earlier. Michael was supposedly out of town at the time that this incident occurred. Well, he couldn't have been if this was true.
Right.
And he was seen dropping off a package during this time frame.
Well, according to this man that saw him, Michael told him, "Hey, keep your mouth shut. You didn't see me."
Now, this is a story that Michael has emphatically denied.
And you would think if it was in front of a bank, near a bank, you would hope they would have some type of surveillance cameras.
Well, you would hope, but I think what you have to ask is how many years later is this information coming out? Because I don't know exactly when the information about the veterinarian came out. If it's like some of these other things and they didn't talk to people until, 6, 7, 8 years after, well, that video is going to be gone.
Yeah, it's gone or been recycled and taped over
And
again.
So the prosecution presented their case, the defense presented theirs, and they both rested. And the jury began deliberating. On November 7th, 2011, Tracey was found guilty of first-degree murder and was sentenced to life in prison. Tracey's father, Bernard, died just after she was sentenced. He was found after relatives sent police to check on him. I guess he died of natural causes, but it was stressed by the family that he was so affected by Tracey's trial and conviction that they felt that it had something to do with his death.
No doubt. It had a wear on him.
So Tracey's found guilty. She's going to be shipped off to prison. In 2012, information came out that Tracey was sharing letters with a guy named James Landa, a child sex offender. She wanted to find witnesses to improve her defense for an appeal. These letters, apparently sent a few days before her sentencing, included photos of children and information about her ex-husband, Michael. So apparently this guy, James Landa, had written to Tracey before her trial, offering her support. Why, I have no idea. So she wrote him back, asking him if he had any friends who had knowledge of the crime. And she said she included the photos of children to try to cheer him up.
Entice him to help her out.
Well, yeah, I would think if you're sending photos of children to a known child sex offender, and then you say you're doing it to cheer them up, what are you really doing it for?
That's encouraging the wrong behavior.
There's no doubt about it. These letters ultimately became public because of her custody battle with Michael. On January 9th, 2014, her conviction was upheld. At appeal, Tracey remained in prison. In April of 2014, Ben Smith filed a garnishment action to obtain $240,000 in court costs, restitution, and other expenses from Tracey. And I guess Gibbs, he placed a court order to confiscate all of the money in her prison accounts. I've never heard of this. Maybe this happens all the time. I don't know. But this is the first time I've actually ever heard of it. And basically what it meant was she wasn't able to buy, things at the canteen or whatever you call it. She wasn't able to buy basic necessities. She wasn't even able to call her family.
Man, she was on lockdown.
because she had no money in her account.
Yeah.
If somebody would put it in, it would be garnished, like taking money out of your check for child support.
Wow. Well,
This guy wasn't messing around.
he wasn't playing at all.
He even went as far as to take the wages that she earned in her job in the kitchen, which meant she had nothing. Now, they don't make a lot, but, might buy you a pack of ramen or something like that. Eventually, Smith amended the order to only take 70% of the money, but they didn't put any of the money that they had taken back. So she had to, I guess, work to build it back up.
It'd be rough when all you can get is a bag of Cheetos, man. That's it.
Then in July 2014, authorities obtained a search warrant stating that Tracey and her mother, Anna, worked together to harass prosecution witnesses by spreading defamatory information about them. I kind of hinted at this earlier, right? The fact that it would come out that Tracey had a habit of this, trying to make people look bad by saying, Gibbs, what was really some horrible things about people. Now, I think most of it was directed at her ex-husbands. Now they're saying she went after some of the witnesses who testified against her. And I think they obtained the warrant based on some phone conversations that Tracey had with her mother. I still think it's strange that people don't realize that all of those conversations that you have in prison are monitored, taped, recorded, whatever.
Yeah, you would think by now everybody would understand that, but back then maybe not so much. But today, boy, if you go and pick up one of those phones, I hope you guys know that.
Well, this is 2014. It's not, 1984.
Right. They should know that.
You should know that. There's enough crime shows. There's enough documentaries. So authorities searched Anna's condo. They seized a flash drive and a computer. And it was alleged that it was Anna who had paid and provided information to a man who made posts on a website called The Ripoff Report. And basically, this guy accused these witnesses who testified against Tracey of everything. I mean, we're talking theft, perjury, fraud, child molestation, murder,
terrorism,
everything
underneath the sun, the whole kitchen sink.
I think the timing was important because Tracey was seeking a new trial. So she was desperate, right, to cast aspersions on the people who had testified against her. This was so bad, Gibbs, that posts were made about one prosecution witness claiming that he was linked to child torture pornography.
That's going to have an impact on your life.
In every way conceivable, right? This guy had a business. It had a very negative impact on that, like we mentioned before. Who wants to patronize a business owned by someone who they believe is involved in child torture pornography? Nobody. Articles were also apparently published defaming John PItman. And it was said that, it put a significant dent into his plastic surgery clinic. Again, it's the power of the internet, right? Social media, the internet. Once you put something out there, it's easy to put it out there.
It is.
And people will latch on to it. It's very hard to walk it back, especially, if you're the person who false things are said about.
Mm-hmm.
How do you clear your name?
It's not easy.
In the virtual world, especially because I read it. It must be true.
It's like that famous commercial, right?
It's on the internet.
It's got to be true.
And then that same person who's reading that, are they going back a month, 3 months, 6 months later to research it again?
Doubtful.
So if new information comes out that it's not true, how likely are they to see that? Probably not.
I've seen articles about companies have to go in and clean this stuff up. It's $20,000 for some of these individuals to get that kind of stuff cleaned up. And there's no guarantee because how rapid the internet is with information.
And how far it spreads.
Exactly.
And yeah. And it's vast. I mean, that's part of the problem. As of 2020, Tracey is currently at Iowa Correctional Institution for Women in Mitchellville. This is the most recent news we could find on her, and it's not known if she's planning further appeals at this time. Now, Tracey and her family maintain her innocence. I think it's safe to say, based on what we said about Burt and his testimony, that he fully believes his mother is innocent. He's also changed his name to Burt Richter instead of PItman. He created a Facebook group called Free Tracey Richter with over 500 members. He also created a change.org petition to help his mother get out of prison. Burt is now 30 years old, married. He's the head coach of the Waukee Warriors lacrosse team at Waukee High School in Iowa. He also owns a company called Tile RX, a renovation company in Des Moines. Michael issued a formal apology to Mona for defending Tracey and insulting Dustin. In 2014, he appealed the custody ruling and he got permission to move himself and the children to Australia. He has a new wife and he and his daughters live in Brisbane, Australia. They've tried their best to keep out of the public eye, and his kids are now in their 20s.
Yeah, grown up.
And they have no relationship whatsoever with their mother, Tracey. John still works as a plastic surgeon. He currently has a private practice in Williamsburg, Virginia. So Gibbs, as we wrap up this case on Tracey Richter, we said it right up front. I think as people hear Tracey's story, there will be some people that are divided, right, in their opinions on her guilt or innocence.
Yeah.
I think some people believe she was just a brave mother, willing to do whatever she had to protect her children. Others believe she was a cold, calculating killer who used Dustin Whede as a pawn in her plot against John PItman. I think it's really hard to look past the things in her life, the troubled marriages, her documented extreme temper, the lies, the manipulation over a long period of time.
Right.
A lot of that's pretty well documented. I don't think it won her any favor with the jury, and I don't think it in any way wins her much favor with the public. And so my thought is the majority of people probably lean towards the fact that she's guilty. I think the Notebook is hard to get past.
I agree. I think that was probably a pretty big deciding factor for people on the jury.
Yeah, I imagine it was. You have this information written in Dustin Whede's handwriting. Okay, how could he have known some of these things unless he got it from Tracey? And then all of a sudden he winds up dead.
Well, and you have Mary Higgins bringing up the Notebook to police. It doesn't look good.
It doesn't. Back to what we said. How does Tracey know about the Notebook? How does Mary Higgins know about the Notebook? Other than the fact that she learned it from Tracey, and who other than Tracey would want to frame someone like John, her ex-husband?
Right.
Because really, to me, that's what that Notebook represents. Unless you believe that John PItman and or Michael hired Dustin to actually kill Tracey and her son, Burt. If not, then it has to be a frame job, right?
It's the only options you have.
But I do think, unlike a lot of cases that seem to be what I would call ironclad, right? The evidence is overwhelming. I think there are some people that could look at this and say, I just don't know if it's there. Doesn't look good. It also sure doesn't look good that you're trying to smear witnesses after the fact. That doesn't look good at all.
That don't bode well.
Does it mean for certain that Tracey killed Dustin Whede in what was a staged home invasion? No, but the jury thought so.
Yeah.
And they got to see a lot more evidence than we did, obviously. Sure. I think at the very least, you'd say things do not look good for Tracey when it comes to this case. But at the same time, I can see where people may have a differing opinion. And that's why we said this case is a little different. I think everybody has to make up their own mind based on the facts that are laid out.
Sure. I mean, her own son, Bert, is saying, my mom didn't do this.
And Bert was there.
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, Gibbs, what son wants to believe that their mother is a killer?
None.
You got that, you got to factor that in as well. But that's it for the case of Tracey Richter. Interesting case, no doubt. Maybe not as straightforward, right, as a lot of the cases that we do. A little bit more mystery in this one.
Like a little mystery.
Yeah. It's kind of got an unsolved flair to it, even though it's solved.
Yeah.
Right? There's still a little bit of mystery. There's a way for you to make up your own mind. That's kind of what we like about some of the unsolved cases.
In this case, you either put your faith behind the jury of your peers or you say, I don't know if they really got it right.
Yeah. We got some voicemails. You want to check those out?
Let's hear them.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. It's Victoria from Northern Ireland here. I actually just listened to one of your podcasts there, and there was a voicemail from another lady from Northern Ireland, and you said how much you liked her accent, which is so strange to me because everybody in Northern Ireland hates their accent, I'm pretty sure, but thanks anyway. I started listening to the podcast and I think maybe August or September time. I'm allowed to listen to music in my part-time job, so I just put my earphones in and listen to TCAP all day. I think I'm almost finished as well, but I haven't really listened in a particular order, which is a bit strange, but I'm really enjoying it anyway, so thank you so much. Bye.
She reminds me of the Irish girl in Peaky Blinders.
Oh, the main one that ends up being married to the main guy?
Yeah.
Or which one? That one?
Yeah.
So how can you not like that accent? That accent is awesome.
Yeah.
I like that. I like the Scottish accent. I mean, I think it's kind of natural that we like accents that are different from ours.
Well, not much different from mine. I mean,
yours is kind of ubiquitous, or it's, it morphs into a bunch of different things. Like I like a good Southern drawl, like Southern accent too. Because I think that's cool, and that's here in the U.S.
You're just happy if someone talks to you.
Yeah. Sometimes I have to pay people to talk to me. It's sad.
Hi guys, this is Summer from Maryland. I just called you guys last week. I'm not trying to harass you or anything, but I'm trying to catch up from, your first podcast, and I'm just on Ed Kemper Part 2, and you were talking about how you'd like to imagine him on this small bike. And it's just funny because my husband rides bikes and he had a small Harley, and he's not huge, but he's like 6'1", and he's kind of stocky. And he literally looked like he was on those little tricycles, like the big clowns in the circus. And it was so funny. And so that picture you guys are great. So, stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
So, Harley makes a lot of cool motorcycles, and those little Sportsters are a lot of fun.
Yeah.
They really are. They're fun to drive. They're nimble. The problem is if you're 6 foot or taller and you're husky, you probably need to step up to like the Road King, which is what I have, or a Street Glide or something like that. If not, you just look like a big dude on this little
tiny bike,
little bike. But it's not to say a lot of men ride the Sportsters. They're fun bikes to ride.
And I don't ride either.
No. Because you refuse to open up that wallet, get you a motorcycle, so we can go on the cross-country tour.
One of these days.
You be Thelma, I'll be Louise, and let's roll it.
Wait, did I want to be Thelma?
I don't remember which one's which. So
yeah.
They both have the same fate.
Why did they be Thelma and Louise, though?
They both end up with the same fate, right?
Can we be like the Marlboro Man and whatever the other guy's name was?
Whatever the other guy's name was. So you pick a duo and you can only remember one name.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Hey, as long as you got it together.
I got it.
Yo, Mike, Gibby, I'm a huge fucking fan of the show. It's your boy Clyde. Anyways, I'm being arrested. This is my one phone call. Figured I'd say, hey, get a little shout out. Anyways, can't wait till you cover me. Bye.
All right. I got to start combing the news for Clyde.
Bond's on its way.
And Gibby's going to he's going to bail you out. That will never happen. Speaking of opening up your wallet to buy a Harley, you ain't never bailing nobody out.
I mean, you're getting a free night in bed and,
just deal with it.
Meals.
I thought that one was funny though.
It was.
You're going to use your one and only phone call to call the TCAT voice line?
Hey, it's Joe again. Sorry I keep calling. I was just listening to the first part after listening to the second part of Eileen Warren. And y'all talk about, like, how serial killers have, like, a bad childhood or a good childhood. Or do you think, like, I don't know if you guys think about, like, a multiverse, like, the way, like, things could be different but the same. Do you think there is a universe where, like, Eileen Warren, like, finds the cure to cancer and Richard Ramirez, like, cures diabetes? And, like, I was just curious. You ain't gonna put it on the podcast, but I just wanted to put it in your head a little bit there, because I feel like it's interesting. Like, is there another plane of existence where, like, John Wayne Gacy, like, solves world hunger? You know, something to think about. Keep on thinking.
We in the Matrix.
Yeah, so got very deep there, right? We're talking about multiverse and planes and planes of existence and all that. What I will say is I do think that some of these people, not all, some of these people with a different upbringing, different parental guidance, different role models, would have a much different path and a different outcome. I truly believe that. Now, some might have the same outcome.
It's kind of like that movie Trading
Places
with Eddie Murphy. Yeah, just
it's
put them
exactly
in a different
like
environment.
It's exactly like that.
Yeah.
No, I don't know if there's an alternate universe. You know, I'm not Stephen Hawking or
what's that other guy with the 3 names?
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
There you go.
All right.
Yeah.
See, how do I know what you're thinking of?
Know. Well,
when I wouldn't even have come up with that name, but for some reason I know that's who you're thinking of.
Yeah.
So I'm not that smart to be able to figure all that stuff out, but I do believe that some of these individuals would have led a productive, non-violent life, possibly, if their environmental factors were different.
Well, I think people would agree with that.
Now, if you're talking about Eileen Wuornos, if you go back to her, she had just a horrible childhood.
Yeah.
It was almost like she had no chance but to end up, doing some things that we wouldn't want any of our children to do.
Yeah, sure.
We've also had some killers that had good backgrounds. So, it kind of flies in the face and you think, well, I don't know. It's back to that nature versus nurture question that comes up quite a bit. And that's why I definitely wouldn't say all. I think there are some people that are going to go down a bad road at some point, no matter what.
Yeah, it's just their destiny.
Yeah, with loving parents, they're given everything, they're treated, the right way. It's a fascinating road to go down, to think about. All right, we appreciate the voicemails. We had one thing in the mailbag, Gibbs.
Yeah.
Friend of the show, Samantha Ungehire, made us some very cool embroidered TCAT stuff that we'll hang here in the studio.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate that, Samantha. All right, buddy, that's it for another episode of True Crime All the Time. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
Inspired by the hit Wondery podcast Against the Odds comes the gripping guidebook, How to Survive Against the Odds, Tales and Tips for Animal Attacks and Natural Disasters. This might just be the most important book you'll ever read. Go inside life or death situations where everyday people survived nature's most extreme scenarios, and learn how you can too. In these tales, you'll hear about the grit, willpower, and know-how needed to endure shipwrecks, alligator attacks, earthquakes, and more. You'll learn from experts, including top doctors, about what happens to your body and mind in life-threatening situations. Plus, important tips on what to do, and equally important, what not to do when faced with a situation that is truly against the odds. Go to survivalguidebook.com to pre-order How to Survive Against the Odds today and get the perfect gift in time for graduation and Father's Day.